Alright folks, welcome to Premium Fuel Mag and welcome back to Stu's Garage. Folks, it's 8,000 degrees here in Stu's Garage, but we're still working on things today. We're working on the Miata. So last video we left off with a long checklist of things that we needed to get done in order to get the Miata started. We still got a few items to knock off on that checklist, but by the end of this video, the Miata will be running. Now I say that right now, not knowing when I'm gonna get this car running, but what I can say is that I'm not gonna release this video until the car is running. So that is true. So I don't know what all that'll entail for me as far as what's expected and what's not expected, but we're gonna get through it. So in the last video, I said that I had everything all wired up. I've been wiring and rewiring and rewiring, and I made some mistakes along the way, and we just had some things that we had to redo. So let's go ahead and take a look real quick. So last video we had the majority of the wiring all wrapped up. One of the major things that I did not compensate for was my ignition setup, and I had the wrong distributor, and I had to go and get myself an MSD box. So that's that in there right there. I was trying to avoid doing that just because I just wanted to keep everything simple. I'm not trying to get a ton of power out of this thing. I don't need any special exotic things, but that's essential for my ignition. I'm not necessarily going to talk about how I set that thing up, just because it's going to end up causing more confusion than anything else. It was kind of a confusing process to put that thing together, and again, as of right now, me shooting this, I don't actually know if that's going to work, if I even have that in there correctly. So let's just cross our fingers and hope that everything works out. But in the meantime, everything's hooked up. When we give the car power, normally it'll do things, but I don't think I have it plugged in right now, so I don't know, we'll see. But we'll show you that a little bit later. What else do we have going on? Oh, so right now, the actual last thing we have to do wiring wise to get this car running is the 3G alternator conversion. So we're gonna go ahead and do that right now. Alright guys, so here is my alternator, and generally speaking, there's two types of alternators that you're going to see out there when you're dealing with these type of cars. There's going to be your single wire type alternator, and there's going to be your 3G type alternator. This is a 3G type alternator. I would say you can tell that it's a 3G because it's got these two plugs on here, but I've also seen single wire alternators that have these plugs on them as well. So I don't really know what all the difference is between them. What I can say is that a single wire alternator is capable of running just off of a power wire straight to your battery, hence the name single wire. With a 3G alternator, you have to wire these things in a particular sequence so that the alternator is aware of itself. I'm not really sure what this stuff does, but you have to wire that in. You have to give it 12 volts key on, and then it'll work the way it's supposed to do. It'll alternate properly. So to get this thing wired, you're going to need yourself a pigtail harness like what I have here. This is called a Ford alternator regulator harness, I think. You're going to need this harness. So you can either do like I did and cut this off of a newer car, and it should look just like this and have both of these pieces on there. Or you can go on LMR or SVE and actually purchase this. I think it's like 10 or 15 bucks or $13, something in that price range. So this is not expensive, but you absolutely need this if you're doing a 3G conversion. Now to get this wired up, I could explain it, or I could just show you this awesome diagram right here. Alright guys, so following the diagram, basically I've got the yellow wire running here. It says to run it to your battery, but guess what? Your battery runs straight here, so this is essentially running to your battery. And then it's got your green wire going to a 12 volt switched ignition source. I have this going to a single plug. That way, if I need to pull the alternator out, I can just unplug the whole thing. And the other side of this plug, this guy's gonna run to a wire which I'm running to my 12 volt key on. So that's how I have mine. It's definitely probably a good idea for you to do the same thing. That way you don't have to fiddle with these two plugs ever again. They can just stay in there. Also, this wire is exposed just because I haven't taped everything up, just because I wanted to show you guys for demonstration purposes. Alright, so this is the 12 volt ignition wire that we talked about earlier. This thing wants power while the car is turned on, and we've already got this right here. We've already run it inside the car, so we're just going to go ahead and hook these two up. Alright guys, so we're behind the dash now, and one of the features that I've incorporated into this build that I really like is this bus bar right here. And basically what this is when I give key on ignition power, which a lot of things call for, it actually lights up this whole bar. So this whole bar becomes live. So anytime I need something that has key on ignition power, I can just run it straight to this bar. So I've got this right here, and this is the cable off the alternator that we just talked about. And I'm just going to go ahead and screw that in right there. Additionally, I've done a similar thing with this bar here. This whole bar is a ground bar. So instead of trying to drill holes at random places and scuff things and sand things and try to make grounds everywhere for things that need grounds, I've just got this right here, and anything that needs to be grounded, I can just screw it right to this bar. Alright guys, next up on our list is the other half of our oil filter relocation. We're going to go ahead and get this mounted in the engine bay in a location that I've basically determined is the best place for me to put it. One thing that I think is really stupid about this, and this isn't the only instance I've run into anything like this, but these mounting holes are not in a position where you can get any sort of tool on them. So I can't use them. So what I'm going to have to do is mount this thing to this piece right here and make a mounting bracket that I can then mount it on. So that'll sit like such. Then I can just go ahead and use screws, screw that in right where I intend on mounting it. And it's aluminum, so I can't weld to it. So I'm going to go ahead and screw that thing in. Alright guys, up next is the throttle cable. It's not on my essentials list, but it is what I feel like working on today. So I think what I'm going to do is reuse the end that goes towards the motor side. I'm going to cut off the pedal side and then try to find a way to basically cobble that stuff back together. Alright guys, that's my throttle cable right there. As you can see, this thing is barely even a foot long. It's crazy. All I got to do now is trim this edge right here. It'll probably go about another 3 to 4 inches. And I have to put some kind of an end on it. I'm not 100% sure how I'm going to attach that to the throttle body just yet, but that's the very least of my concerns. That's the easiest part of this whole process. Alright guys, my rev limiter chip came in today, and this one is for 6300. So on an old school CD box like what I have in my car, this is actually how you control your rev limiter. So we've got 6300 RPMs. It's a little bit generous from what I'm doing, but it's not excessive. You know, we want to drive the car hard, but we don't want to try to blow it up. So we're going to go ahead and pop this thing into the CD box. Alright, next thing, we're going to use this little AN hose that I made up to bleed the fuel system. The second reason is because there's a lot of trash in the fuel lines from cutting and splicing, and we want to push all of that stuff out. We don't want that stuff to flow into the sniper unit. Alright guys, next order of business is we're going to add coolant. The radiator is in the back. It does have a cap, but the way the car is situated right now, it's probably going to be a little bit easier for me to do this from the front. So what we've done is we've raised the front up about a foot off the ground just to get everything nice and high above the other part, which would make that the lowest point. I do have this open, so hopefully we can get enough water in there to where it'll flow out of the radiator, and that means we'll be full of water. Alright guys, we're getting close, I promise. Next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna add transmission fluid. Yes, this is ATF, the T5 transmission uses ATF as transmission fluid. So I'm gonna show you guys the way I like to add transmission fluid. The transmission fill plug is on the passenger side of the car. Alright, so right now we're underneath the passenger side of the car and we're looking at the side of the transmission. So this is your drain plug here, your fill plug is, and the fill plug is up there. So first off, I just want to give you guys a little rule of thumb. Before you ever drain your transmission fluid, always open the fill plug first, because if you drain your fluid and you can't get the fill plug off, then you're going to have an issue. There's some other tricks that you can do for that, but always make sure that you can open your fill plug before you do anything. So anyways, as far as filling the transmission goes, how the heck do you get fluid in there? Well, you're supposed to use a special fluid pump, but who the heck has a fluid pump laying around? The method that I like to do is actually to drill a hole right in the side of the transmission tunnel and run a tube down there. And I have the same thing in the Mustang, and I'm going to do the same thing in this car because it's a million times easier. Alright guys, we're at the bottom of the list now. All we gotta do is get our timing situated. So right down there is our harmonic balancer. As you can see, I cleaned off the timing marks on there, and I got it set where we need timing wise. And the last thing I gotta do on the engine side is to get this rotor pointed. This guy has to point somewhere in this area where the #1 spark plug is. So I'm gonna get that done, and then we're gonna set up the ECU and then try and turn this thing over. Alright guys, I had to take a break for a little while and let it get dark on me, but we're going to go ahead and power everything up and program this ECU. So one of the things I just kind of wanted to show you about this Holley setup that I have is it pretty much lets you dial in exactly what engine you have and what's on it, and it gives you a nice little base map to start your car with. Alright, there was a minor fuel leak, and now there we go. We're primed up. We're in neutral so we don't fly off our jack stands. And we're just gonna see what happens. Nothing. Not even a shadow of anything. Alright guys, been working with Steve. There's Steve over there in the dead of night. We woke up Mr. Kenny. Sorry Mr. Kenny, but I think we've got our issues sorted out. We had our fuel lines backwards. Yeah, here comes Mr. Kenny. Hey Mr. Kenny. We woke you up, huh?
I told him.
There we go. One more test fire. It's too late to be doing this, so we're gonna do it later. All right, folks, finally got this thing started. It's a major milestone for this project, as you would imagine. We still got some idle issues and some other minor things that have to get worked out, and we've got a little bit of a to-do list in order to get this car actually moving. The next few steps are gonna be basically preparations for me to get the car from here inside the garage so we can do other things like exhaust and front end tightening up and everything else. But we got the car running, just like we said we would at the beginning of the video, and we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. So we'll catch you guys on the next one.